Welcome back, it's Haz here with another episode of my job breakdown series for Final Fantasy Origin, where I'm showcasing all the jobs available in the game, what they can do, and how they work. In this episode, we will go through all aspects and abilities of the Mage basic job. Thank you already for watching and subscribe to see more Final Fantasy Origin content. The Mage job is the first tutorial magic job unlocked in the game in order to clear a firewall area and introduce magic to the player. It is a beginner-friendly job using the cudgel and the shield as its weapon, and has access to 4 elements. The Mage job tree is required to progress in order to unlock the Black Mage, Red Mage, and White Mage advanced jobs. Mage is a beginner-friendly magic job with the aim to introduce players to the magic system of Final Fantasy Origin. It focuses on both casting magic and using magical combos, and its strengths lie in exploiting elemental weaknesses of enemies and damaging their break gauge. While it does not have access to all elements, it's a very MP-efficient magic job, and its break damage is very respectable. This job is recommended for people who aim to be magic users in the game, as it will introduce you to the system and will teach you what element to use in what situation. While you will probably want to unlock more advanced magic using jobs, Mage is very much worth keeping, as it is one of the best, if not the best, caster to exploit elemental weaknesses. Keep in mind, while there are casters in Stranger of Paradise, the game heavily encourages melee combat with all jobs, and I recommend making use of your melee abilities to fully master them. Its core ability, unlike most martial jobs, is spellcasting. Spellcasting is used with the R2 button held down, and you're able to swap your element using an elemental wheel with your left thumbstick. This is probably the worst button they could have mapped in the game for it, in my opinion, as it will give you several headaches accidentally switching elements in the middle of a combo. Hopefully they will allow changing it in the future. Either way, you're able to choose 4 elements as a mage: fire, water, earth, and air. For each element, you're able to charge them in their iconic forms such as Fyra and Fyraga. The elements all seem to do similar damage, so which one you will choose will depend entirely on enemy weaknesses and what kind of crowd control you'd like to see. Fire spells cause fire damage through multiple ticks, ending with a giant explosion. Water spells knock enemies in the air, while Water Gun seems to pull enemies into a single spot. Quake and Quake Gun knocks multiple enemies into the air in a large radius, and Arrow and Arrow Gun conjures a giant tornado sucking in enemies around and keeping them stunned. I personally have found Arrow and Water the most useful, as their CC is super valuable and are most impactful, while Fire and Quake are situational. Arrow is especially great, as even a single arrow charge will conjure a tornado and keep multiple enemies locked. I'd like to bring special highlight to the Swordsman basic job's cross job ability or command ability called Reinforce. This is a must-have command for all spellcasters in my opinion, as it speeds up your spellcasting by at least 50% and protects you from all stagger during spellcasting for 30 seconds. This is a massive game changer for spellcasters, so don't overlook it. Let's see the Mage's active abilities. Brute Strike is your quickest active ability, dealing physical damage to enemies and knocking them high into the air. It's decent CC, but nothing too fancy. It's really useful against enemies with high magic resistance. Tidal Tremor is your first elemental combo, dealing water strike damage to enemies in a radius, replicating the pull and rough damage of a Watera. Your final combo is Aftershock, your highest break damage dealing combo, but also the longest, sending out a shockwave with the last strike dealing earth damage, replicating the rough damage of a Quake-Ra. The cross-job ability for Mage is called Ruin. It is a magic projectile dealing okay-ish damage, but its main use comes from the stagger it applies, as it applies minor knockback to enemies. It is great for other jobs against flying enemies, and since commands are abilities you can use anytime, even to interrupt combos, Ruin is a fantastic ability to use to interrupt enemies and extend your combos on them. Its combo modifiers are Mage's Medal and Sorcerer's Scheme. Mage's Medal restores MP based on the magic damage dealt by the connected ability. It's not bad, especially if you use it with commands that reduce MP cost of abilities, but I found the MP restored really low early game, so perhaps this will be more useful only later. Sorcerer's Scheme is linked ability, reduces enemies' max break gauge on impact. It's more useful now, especially against enemies with really high break gauges. It's a good modifier to further strengthen the Mage's break damage bonuses. Mage's affinity bonuses are quite nice and synergize well with the whole kit. You will want to reach skill attack bonus 1 and 2 for a 15% increased ability break damage bonus, but Sorcerer's Soul and Mace Master are probably optional. Sorcerer's Soul refills your break gauge when hit by an enemy during a rear attack link. It's not bad, but it's kinda weird for a mage, and I don't find it particularly useful, as jobs have different break gauges, and on low break gauge, switching a job always seems to be a better option. Mace Master, of course, gives you all weapon abilities from maces. Finally, the passive abilities for Mage are plus 50% affinity, 11% normal attack MP recovery, 13% enemy weakness magic break damage, and plus 48% magic vulnerability resistance. The MP recovery is very handy, especially as a caster, and the enemy weakness breaking is another layer of increased break damage when using the proper element against them. This is it for our Mage job breakdown for Final Fantasy Origin. Hope you found this episode useful and look forward to more. If you have any feedback you'd like to see or change in the breakdowns, let me know in the comments section. And as always, thank you very much for your support. Until next time.